Did you mute that?
Mute the music. I didn't.
Hello.
Welcome. Hey, y'all. We're super excited to be going live again. 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row. Okay, so we have another question that came in, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. Is a question that I think a lot of people who work in the healing space wonder, how can I help other people if I haven't healed myself? How can I help other people if I'm not cured? That was really the question that came in. And I've been thinking about this one for a couple of days. And also, inside of herbal medicine for the soul, I think this is one of the questions that does come up often.
Well, I think it's also a personal question that we ask ourselves a lot also, being in a healing space. And you're like, well, if I'm not perfect. Then how can I possibly help someone else?
Right. So let us know in the chats. We're both on IG.
Hey.
And we're on YouTube. So let us know in the chat where you're chiming in from. Thanks so much for joining us. And Brianna. And
if you're in IG, pop over to YouTube, because that's where we're going to moderate the chat, and we can answer your specific questions, because that's what these lives are all about, is another touch point to us, but to answer your very specific question. Right. So pop over to YouTube so we can continue the conversation over there as well. What's up?
Hey, Tatalia.
Hey, Mari.
Yeah, it's much easier. I'm sorry. I don't know if y'all can hear Niles in the background screaming while he plays his video games. My bad, or our bad if you can.
Parenthood.
Right. So we're going to keep it moving. So the question for today is, and we're not coming in making up questions. These are actual questions that come in. So this was the question of how can I help others? Okay, we're going to have to tell her to stop screaming. How can I help others if I'm still struggling with my own health issues? Another way that it was phrased too, I have to be careful with our language as herbalists. How are people going to trust me as an herbalist if I can't cure myself? And so we know that, folks, we can't say cure. We really can't even say heal. Y'all know how it goes. So herbalists are not curers. The medical industry doesn't even want to be a cure. We're not going to talk about that.
That's a different life.
That's a different life. So this is what we're diving into today. And I know it's such a great topic, and I think about it all the time. Because I think well, what if, as the face of Iwilla Remedy and the primary teacher, what if I'm sick? What if something's going down? How do I show up as an example? And one example of that is even when we had COVID.
You went down hard.
I did.
You went down hard.
It took me the longest to recover out of everyone in the family, to the point where we had to call a nurse in to get IV fluids because I was so dehydrated. I was vomiting. I had never experienced,
two of us.
I had never experienced body aches before. And so I remember getting up. So they had it. It just kind of made its way through the house when it happened. And everyone kind of went down consecutively so that there was always someone to take care of
the next one.
And so I was the third, went down, and I remember getting up and doing yoga and just being my hips really hurt. They just are aching. And I was I just need to do yoga. So let me get on the mat and do yoga. And I could not get through the practice. I was something is not right. I need to go lay down. And I remember it just grew to the point, there was so much pain that I was just writhing in bed. I was I don't know what's happening. It's this is what body aches are. I'm this is terrible. This is terrible. And I'm so dehydrated, so exhausted. We had IV fluids come in. And I don't even know if I can share that story, right? Because of
the shame around
the embarrassment.
I went down so hard. Why are you going to listen to what I have to say?
Right.
Because by being in this space, it feels, whether it's true or not, it feels like you are meant to be perfect. And I know even if we get a cold, I'll speak for myself. If I get a cold, I have people look at me and be you get sick? And it's sometimes, I am a person and, I am living this experience right along everybody else. But there absolutely is this kind of feeling of hiding if something doesn't seem perfect. And I think that that is a great segue into this conversation, because how can you meet somebody where they are if you are on this pedestal of hierarchy and perfection? Because you would never understand what someone is going through if you didn't have some experience in some sort of discomfort yourself.
Yeah, and like health is so personal. I think it is very different. Like I think that in our society, we are taught that, well, you have to learn from people who have absolutely like done the thing. So in business, that makes sense. Where it's like, if we want to grow Iwilla Remedy to 7 figures, then yeah, that does make sense. Where we should learn from people who have also grown businesses to 7 figures. But health is really personal, and there is no like business has blueprints. Business has clear formulas, and personal health does not, largely because people have emotions, people have feelings, people have their own thoughts that we can really never know, and people have their own soul path, their own soul plan. I think that there are like a constellation of like foundational principles that being human being embodies that we can follow that support our well-being. But ultimately, when it comes to health, we have no idea what's going on up here, no idea what's going on in here, and no idea what's going on in like someone's consciousness. Yeah.
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 Well, because it is very personal. You can say, I did ABC, and one could say, okay, I'm going to do exactly what you just said you did. I'm going to do ABC also. But that doesn't account for someone's personal lived experience and their own blockages and their own things that they have to work through. And also, like, just the way they see things. You can interpret that completely different. And I think that's also why, from a health perspective, there's nothing that I believe could ever replace someone's inner knowing, someone's inner guidance of, let me try this, in using all practitioners as thought partners instead of, I don't know the proper word, but like,
I don't know, just some kind of expert.
Tellers, dictators,
you, like follow blindly.
Right.
Like you really do have to listen to your own body. And to that extent too, like we can't account for environment. There's so many factors where it's like the principles of like eating well, that it can be very difficult for people who have insecure housing and who have insecure job situations. So there's a lot of factors that are at play. So yeah.
So let's dive deeper into the question. We have some comments in the chat. What's up, Candace?
Hey, Candace. Cousin Candace is on. Just woke up to this realization a few months ago.
Kelly says, yes, this was a huge part of HM4S, herbal medicine for the soul. Starting off with, what does health mean to me? That's like, that's a huge question. And we're going to get into what does healing mean to you? Because I think that if everyone is not working from the same definition, then I would find it very hard for someone to land in the same.
Yeah, we can never land in the same place when we're not working from the same definition. We just dive right into that.
Right.
Because that was definitely something that I learned in working with people and working one-on-one and doing consultations. And it's like, we are not operating from the same definition of how to improve your health, your well-being, where you are. So it really had, instead of making assumptions, just started asking people, what does healing mean to you? What does healthy mean to you? Where do you see our work going? Because sometimes there's, I can use the example of one particular client. She's been on pharmaceuticals for 13 years and in chronic pain for 13 years, unable to work. And so our goal together was to make progress, right? Was to help her get off of the pharmaceuticals and reduce that, not to necessarily make it so that you never experience this chronic pain again. I can't control that.
Right.
There's too much inside of.
Well, she can't control that either. At that point.
Stage.
At that stage.
So I think it's really important to get clear about what healing means to you. What does cure mean to you? what does healthy mean to you? Because I think that we can also pursue goals that maybe don't even matter. And I think that the fibroids has been a really good teacher. I think personally in our family, but also personally working with clients, where every single person that I have worked with who experiences fibroids has a completely different goal, completely different, where it's like, I could make the assumption, well, you want to be fibroid free. Incorrect assumption.
Right. And you made that assumption with me because there are fibroids in my body, and Salima was like, you're going to pass them. You're going to be fibroid free. And I had to sit and ask myself, does that matter to me? Do I want to be? And it didn't. That was actually, I could care less if they're in there or they're not. What I cared about was I want to be pain-free. That was number one. I want to be pain-free. I want to be able to exercise without pain. And I want to feel light in my uterus. My uterus was super heavy. I want to feel light in my uterus. Those were my top 3 for healing fibroids. Them getting cut out of me was never an option for me personally. I was like, I'm not down for that. And passing them, I was like, if it happens, okay. If it doesn't, I mean, that's okay too. But I was really, when I got really laser focused on what it meant for me, is when some real change happened in my life, when I stopped adopting someone else's definition of what healed meant.
Yeah, and that definition, even for me, came from just like what we hear at medical appointments. That it's like the goal with the medical appointment, have the hysterectomy or have the fibroid removal surgery. So it's like, okay, I suppose that's supposed to be what everyone's goal is. And it's not. Some people are very adamant about having them shrink. Some people are adamant about of actually birthing them. Some people, similar to Tammy, I don't care, I just want to be symptom free. And for some, if they're older and they know that they tend to shrink and be asymptomatic after when we go through menopause, they're like, I just need to make it these couple of years to menopause. And then I know it won't be as much of an issue. So that's really important to sit with yourself to think about, what does healing mean to you? What does being healthy mean to you? What is really important? Like, what is your number one priority without the voices of what everyone else says you should strive for?
Right. And then there's your goal.
Right. And there's your goal. And you reached your goal.
I did reach my goal. But here's the thing with goals, right? Once you reach it, and here's the thing with this experience we call life. Once you reach it, then you have a new one, right? Then it's like, okay, check, great. Now I want, right? So now I don't, but now it might be, I want to pass these. Now I want them out of me. But understanding that you're always going to want something else. Like, and I don't believe that healing is a destination. I don't think you're like, oh, I'm healed, I'm done. I think that it gives you the opportunity to ask for more and to live more. And I think that really helps when you are in the position of being an herbalist and working with clients and seeing people and understanding and being able to articulate that to somebody that might feel downtrodden right now, that you won't always be here. There'll be a point in which this is in your rearview mirror, and you're going to hit the point of whatever your day one goal is, and then you're going to want more. And I think that it's hard to imagine wanting more when you do feel downtrodden.
When you're in so much pain. But that brings up a good point, like a segue into like the role of an herbalist as being a guide, and we can't provide any guarantees because everyone's experience is different. Health is very personal, as we already said. And we provide paths, we provide tools. Of course, we educate on plants and on, the foundational like wellness principles, but ultimately the outcome for someone is varied. And you can't take on that responsibility of like, well, this person didn't heal, this person didn't go into remission, or this person, still has to manage with herbs and pharmaceuticals while they were seeing me. You can't take the full responsibility of someone else's healing onto your shoulders.
Yeah, because it's not your responsibility. It's no one's responsibility for one's own personal healing aside from themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's so personal, and no one person could possibly understand everything that happens underneath. And I call these underthoughts. Those underthoughts, those thoughts that happen deep down inside that you might not even speak about.
Right. And that plays a huge part into whether or not people feel like they're experiencing progress.
Yeah.
Because belief is a really core tenet of healing. Like, what do you believe? And if you believe in opposition to your healing, well, then the reality is that's not going to happen.
Well, the reality is that's probably what you're going to continue to experience. Yeah.
People have a hard time kind of grappling around that, but we get what we believe. So like mindset and belief, that's a huge part of the healing process. That's why we go into that so much inside of Herbal Medicine for the Soul.
What do you say? Can't heal.
Can't heal. If you don't adjust the feels, you don't actually heal.
Oh, that's what it is.
Heal, something like that.
I knew it was feels and heals.
Feels and heals, got like a little alliteration.
You love a good alliteration.
But I do want to think about like the framework. I know the person who came in with this question, and you brought up a really good point as we were talking about it, that what if everyone decided, well, since I'm not perfect, I'm not going to contribute. And for this particular person and the chronic illness that they experience, like they're not in the hospital anymore.
Yeah.
They're not having severe flare-ups like they once had. And you were saying, well, someone who could be not on TikTok maybe, but someone could be watching your content who was in the hospital experiencing the same condition that you experience and wishing and wanting to know, well, how do I get to where
you are? That's my goal. I want to get there. That could be someone's hope and prayer. And if you hold yourself back from sharing from the place in which you are doing such a disservice to people that are behind you. Like, how can they possibly have hope to get to a day one for them if they don't ever see someone's day one or day two? Like, how can I hold a vision of possibility if no one has the
courage
to share? Here is where I am right now. And another point, which I think is super beneficial, I think it's super beneficial to share to people one step behind you. Mm-hmm. I think that because when you're sharing with someone one step behind you, you're sharing because you've made some progress, so you understand how to get to at least where you are, but you're not so far removed that you don't remember what it felt like to be where they are. And I think that there is a great level of empathy that can happen at that stage with that close proximity.
And there's so many micro steps in every healing journey too. Like, think about the difference between the person who hasn't had a flare up, not in the hospital in a year, to the person who's currently in the hospital and trying to figure that out, right? It's like, what do you do that first 30 days when you are released from the hospital? That's a beautiful time to think about, like, how can you contribute to someone else's experience, to their own healing journey? What do you do for this first year? But you can chunk that down, where it's like, think about what it's like to be a beginner again, right? To be a beginner, and what are beginners feeling? What are they doing that's getting in their way? And how can you help them in the mindset of a beginner? It's like, I'm trying to get out of the hospital. What do I need to do? Tomorrow is when I'm getting released. What do I need to start doing? What do I need to fill my pantry with? What kind of movement activities, whatever it is, like different illnesses have different requirements. But if you're trying to relate to someone who has the same experience as you, there are many micro steps that you can coach them in and contribute to their journey.
You make a great point. And I remember you and I having this conversation, and you were saying you had forgotten what it felt like to be a beginner. And so you were, I can't remember exactly what we were talking about, but you're like, why would I, like, everyone knows that. Yeah. Why would I share that? Why would I say that? Everyone knows that. And I was like, everyone doesn't know that. And I think a lot of times when we're deep in our learning that people forget. Everyone doesn't know this, especially if you're deep in your learning and you're surrounded by people that are all talking about the same thing. So you're preaching to the choir. Everyone's saying the same things, the same language, back and forth. And so when you're in that huddle, it's easy to forget. Everyone does not know, for example, how to make a proper cup of tea. Everyone does not have that knowledge. And so I think when you are coming from the perspective of like, how can I possibly help someone if I'm not, light years ahead? And it's like, there are so many people that don't know the very basics of what I have to do to get forward in whatever ailment they're experiencing.
Yeah, that was a good conversation that we had, because we do get into this space where it's like all the content I see is based on, where I am. And so we kind of forget that we're a small group of people. And I think people who come into the shop and the questions they ask, that helps me remember just how many beginners still exist. That because it also sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm just saying what everyone else is saying. So I don't want to say what everyone else is saying. Like, everyone's progressed. We're here now. Like, we're in, step 325. And it's like, no, there are so many people who are still at step 1 and contemplating it, like confused at step 1. It's like, you can always reinforce the fundamentals, especially like when we're thinking about diet and beginner herbs that are good for beginners. I end up saying the same thing week after week after week to the people who come into the shop, because this is their first time.
Right.
This is their first time they've walked into an herb shop. And they're coming from hearing a TikTok video say, I need to do a detox. And it's like, well, let's talk.
I don't know, maybe not.
But let's talk. I need to do a harsh protocol. I need to reset my body in 7 days. And it's like, well, I just literally had that conversation today on the phone with someone.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's just like, well.
Not saying you don't. Not saying you do, but let's dive deeper into this.
Like, those harsh protocols end up setting people up for really high expectations, and sometimes causing a lot of damage.
Yeah. I think there's a question in the chat before we go on. Do you think this is also another Western medicine versus herbalism double standard? The skeptical, if plants worked so well, why are you perfect vibe? That they would never ask a doctor. Yes. I think in our society, I do believe that it's changing, but I think in our society that there has been a long line of one giving up their power and giving it all to doctors and feeling like they don't need to know anything about themselves. And now we're saying you can be a thought partner with a doctor, and you can know this on your own. And to begin, you had to show who you are. You had to show, why should you listen to me? You had to show that I went through this and I got here, and you can too. And I think over time, what has happened is because you had to show personal growth, right? A doctor doesn't have to show personal growth. They just have to have gone to school and passed, right? Because you had to show personal growth, that it is very personal to you, that if you are not perfect, if you are, if you go down with COVID for a week or 2 weeks, then you must be
3 days.
Or whatever. Then you must be wrong. Then this isn't the right path. Yeah. Because if it was, then you wouldn't have been sick. Yeah. And so I think the difference between herbal medicine and Western medicine, at least the way it is from this side, is it's very personal in terms of we have to share our personal health journeys. And I think that because we share our personal health journeys, people have an expectation of you never get sick.
Yeah, I do think about that. The line of questioning that I think I get to have to validate my experience that I don't think a physician would get. That it's like, someone asked, well, are you qualified to look at my labs? Or have you ever has this ever worked for somebody? But that kind of questioning, I don't think that happens to doctors.
From a personal perspective.
Yeah.
Right? It might be asking from does this medicine work? And it's not them personally. Like,
yeah. I don't even think most people feel like they have the power or the agency to question. I think it takes people they have to develop a lot of courage to push back inside of those medical appointments, and they're so rushed. You got 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the potential consequence of asking someone, if they're more ego driven, they might not care for you.
And we've seen that as well.
Happen. So I think people feel more consequences with pushing back in medical appointments than they necessarily do with me. But I have to either prove, and I think that leads to the pressure to be perfect. And it's like I have to prove that this works, and I also have to prove that it's worked for people that it's just back to the proving. Like I have to prove that it works either for me or have the testimonials that it's worked for somebody else.
Right. And if you don't have that to back it up, then it's like, well, you don't know what you're talking about.
And I think like our medical industry has really set this standard of like things that are evidence-based are not, like our ancestral knowledge doesn't count as that. That we have, the scientific method in this process, clinical trials and randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials that prove that things work, and it completely ignores all of the evidence that herbal medicine does. And so I still think we hold that tension of like, how do I communicate that this works in a way that you are willing to try it, you're open, you're going to believe, and you're going to have, it's hard for people to not have the same expectation of like, I took 2 Motrin and my cramps went away. Now I'm drinking a cup of red raspberry leaf tea and it didn't work. So it must not work. And it's like, oh boy. And so it's a lot of education. It's a lot of education.
And that's why we're educators.
Yeah, that's why herbalists are educators first. I firmly believe that.
Right.
Every step of the way, we are educating. So what did we talk about so far? Your body reflects your emotional ebbs and flows. So there's that element of it where it's like you can't control what is going on in someone else's inner conversation. And we are human too. So we have our own internal conversation. Like that is going to can manifest as physical ailments too. I think it's okay to remember that you can always contribute and teach beginners.
I would say, especially if you are in the space of starting and feeling like I haven't healed myself, so how could I possibly help someone else? I think starting with beginners is the perfect entry for that person.
And there's so much to contribute when it comes to herbal medicine. We have so many entry points where it's like you can always talk about diet, you can always talk about different plants and how they work. And then you kind of, as you're working along in your journey and you're synthesizing things, that's when you can start sharing your own synthesis and your own understanding of like how you put this together into like a system. But there's a lot of information that people just don't know and don't understand.
But I think that also helps with the building blocks of your process, right? I think it's really hard to understand how you're going to operate as an herbalist just with your own personal healing. I think once you go out in the world and you start working with people, that really starts to give you the building blocks of what kind of herbalist am I? Maybe I do want to work with only beginners. Like that's where I really shine on getting people up and rolling. Or maybe you're like, I don't want to work with beginners. I really want someone that's further along so that I could really catapult them from that point. I think that if you look at it as a foundational period to figure out where not necessarily where you fit in, but how do I want to show up in this work? I think is very important, because I have seen that that is a question people ask. I don't know how I want to show up in this work, but I know I'm called to do this work. I know I want to do this work. And inaction isn't going to help answer that question.
Yeah.
Right?
You're saying inaction, not
that
in action. Inaction together.
Inaction together. One word.
One word. Right. Not doing anything.
Not doing anything isn't going to help answer that question. Yeah. So sitting saying, well, I don't know, I can't do X, Y, and Z because I am not far enough along. And so I'm just going to sit here and try to figure it out. Well, that's not going to happen. But if you say, well, I'm at step 5, let me find someone that's at step 3 and let me see how this interaction goes. Let me see how this conversation goes. Now you are in action and taking steps, and you will have more to draw on, and you'll have answers to move yourself in the direction that really resonates with you.
Yeah, I think like coming from, I think the folks who have asked this question and like the chronic illnesses that they're experiencing, they really resonate with people who have the same chronic illness. And if you're experiencing like to the degree that you're hospitalized, like I think that's big. To your point, that's really big to take on. Like I'm gonna help people heal fully. We're thinking about that, right? Heal fully from the same thing that I have healed from, and it is big. And I've had that realization too, thinking about like helping people with trauma and helping people who've also experienced sexual abuse and childhood abuse and supporting them. And it's all very big. You kind of see how big it is once you get into it.
Well, once you start, if you're deer in headlights immediately, you need to step back. You need to take a few steps back because this is why you have to be in action.
In action, you have to be making moves.
You have to be making moves because only then will you be like, oh, wait. No, I'm not ready for this. I can't attack that. But that doesn't mean you stop. Yeah. That doesn't mean you can't, work up to that someday, but you're not just going to magically pop up there, right? You have to start with your baby steps and you have to figure out what those are. And the perfect spot to start are with beginners.
Right. It's like I can help people maybe who experience this issue, but I can help them with their food. I can help them with their movement practices. I can help them with their meditation practice. Like you can like chunk it into little pie slices of like, I'm really resonating on this community of people, and this is the way to start. I'm going to help this community of people.
Yeah.
So I help introduce people to herbal medicine, like that can help them have some spaciousness between their triggers and their reactions.
And I'm going to tell you, that is a big undertaking all in its own.
It is.
Teaching beginners is not for the faint of heart, and it's not super easy. I think sometimes we think like, if I can't heal all of you, if I can't help heal all of you, then I've done nothing. And if that is someone's thought process, I would implore them to flip the script and think of that in a different way. Yeah. Because it's not your responsibility to heal anybody. If you're in this work, you're guiding, right? But 2, don't take that from somebody, right? Yeah, don't take their win as yours. That's their win. And the only way they get their win is by being an active participant in their own healing journey and process and progress. And you are, again, I think I said at the top of the call, you are a thought partner. And you are offering, knowledge, and you are offering a place for them to come and feel seen and heard. But at the end of the day, they have to go home. They have to go back to their own lives, and they have to put it into motion.
Yeah, the other point was to reframe the concept of healing, to really figure out for yourself, what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to be healed, to be cured? Don't impart or project your definitions onto the people that you're working with, and even to your family. ask people, how do they want to be supported? What's they're at step one? What is their step two? What is, or you call it day one, day two?
Yeah.
What's your step two? I can move you this far. And then let them go on their way.
And also understand that there's someone else.
There's someone else.
There's someone else that can come up and support them on their, if you can bring them to their day two, there will be someone else that will pop up that can bring them to their day three, if that's not you.
The world is abundant. Yeah, I had to think about that too, where it's like, I would like take offense when when someone stopped working with me or decided to like work with, we have a cousin who even did this. Not you, Candace. We have a cousin that did this, where it's like, we did the consultation package, got her going. And then I saw on a Facebook post that she's now like working with maybe a doctor in like their like program. And for a minute I was like, what? Like, you cheating on me? Like, what is going on? Like, I thought I was your person. I thought I was your partner. But it's like, no, step back, Slima. You got her going.
Right.
You got her going literally from zero of like, I've been eating sad American diet. I've been eating junk food for 50 years. I can stop. And I got her to help her stop. And then she got to the next point in which this is the level of accountability that she needed. And then also realizing like, I don't want to do that. I don't want
You're like,
the
I'm
way
not.
that I structure the programs and the way I work with people is intentional, where it's like, I've given you the blueprint. I've helped you to a point. Go forth and continue and succeed, because we are not going to have coaching calls every 3 weeks. We are not going to do that. We're not going to do that. I want people to have agency.
Right.
It's like, what do you do when the person's not around?
And and for us, we're big about that, right? We're big, like, you have to be able to do this on your own.
Yeah.
But also understand that you are not always the person that brings someone over the finish line, right? You're not always that person. Sometimes you are the coach at the line, getting them ready, fixing their stance, cheering them on, just so they can start. But understand that you're not always the one at the finish line. You're not always the one when they're up giving their acceptance speech, that you're like, you were right there with me. But know that you helped someone along their journey to get there. And I think that is, if someone can frame it in that way, it's really easy for you to step back. And in Slima's case, I take offense when you go to someone else, but also give yourself some relief that it was like, right. I'm your conditioning coach, right? I'm not your finish line coach. And I'm good with that. And I'm okay with that, because I know my lane and I know how I'm showing up. Because what's going to happen is when you take off and you go on to the next, I got a line of people behind me that need me. There's so many other people that need to show up and for me to get them set for them to take off.
I know. I'm not gonna be thanked in the award, huh?
I mean, maybe you will, but I don't. A lot of times you don't remember the one who got you started. You remember who got you over the finish line.
That's true. That is so true. That's funny. So reframing the definition. Ask people. Don't impose your definition of that on others. Remember that herbalist guide. We don't guarantee. We can't guarantee. Nobody can.
Right.
Nobody can make a guarantee about the outcomes of somebody else's health, because it's deeply personal. We don't know your soul journey. And then really shift the focus that like, this is if you're in this world, it's like you're not really doing this for fun. This is your calling. Like, you are doing it for fun, but I think that we are unique, where it's like, we're a group of people who are crazy about plants and who have these personal experiences with healing with plants. We have relationships with plants. That's a calling. That's not necessarily something that you just like, I don't know. It chooses you.
It does choose you. It taps on you. And you either answer the call or you keep hanging up until.
Right. And I think that's the consequence of when we hold ourselves back, thinking that we need to have we need to model perfection or like perfect health. The consequence of that is not stepping into this work that deeply calls us. We sacrifice our own fulfillment. And then I even know like personal stories when I wasn't stepping in, Remember me limping up?
I do.
I was
do.
limping. I was in so much knee pain. And if you are in Herbal Medicine for the Soul, you know that knee pain is correlated with like not moving forward. It's like I'm not moving forward. I'm in so much pain. I'm limping. I'm adjusting the way I walk up the stairs. I'm adjusting how I get out of bed, out of the seat. And I'm just like, I know I don't need to take an Advil. I know exactly what I need to do, but I'm too afraid. But in being fearful, I'm creating more pain for myself. And the minute I started,
Right, I was gonna say, what happened the minute you started?
I started, and that was really the development of Herbal Medicine for the Soul. I remember waking up and being like, oh shit, I'm not in pain anymore. Going up the stairs, I'm like, I don't have to do that anymore. So it's like, I think we really do sacrifice our own fulfillment, our own joy when we don't meet our hearts where it's saying, this is where you're supposed to go. Or this is what you're meant to do.
Or also when you don't answer the call that's coming into you and you keep hanging up and you're trying to make the phone call and be like, but I want it to be this. Yeah, you're laughing because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because you did.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Are you talking about the other course?
Yes,
right.
because I'm going to put Salima on blast for a minute because the call to me for her was extremely clear. I was like, I don't know how much more clear this could get.
And how many people like saying it? That's not just you.
Like we had people calling us and asking, are you going to have a course? So in any event, Salima was so adamant about not answering her personal calling. She went through the trouble of building a whole other course for relationships. And went so far as to tell me, Tammy, we're relationship coaches. And I was like, we are? I'm like, I don't think just because we're married makes us, I'm like, I don't understand how that works.
People are always asking us for relationship advice. How do we like work together and live together and do everything together? We still like each other.
I'm like,
we can always justify it, right?
Right. And I was like, okay, but I'm like, I don't think that that's your calling. I think we could talk about that absolutely because we are married and work together, but I don't think that was the call, right? And I think that's the distinction. I don't think that was the call. Yes, it's something you like to talk about and you want to share. Okay, great. But I don't think we are relationship coaches, right? Like, I don't think that's the bucket. And when you finally were honest with yourself, because the other thing you also try to do is the little kids. And I was like, you need to stop with like trying to teach little kids. That's not, I'm like, that's not your calling either. And when you stopped arguing for your limitations and started stepping up for your aspirations is when everything opened up.
Yeah. I mean, you would have to scroll way back on our IG. So I don't release anything. I mean, no, like full on promoting a course on relationships. Someone bought it. Like, this is what we're doing. That was not it.
That was not
it.
But sometimes you do have to try the things on until you're ready to pick up the full on weight of the call.
Because of imposter syndrome. Like, I just did not feel ready, didn't feel equipped, didn't feel like I knew enough, didn't feel just all of the excuses. And all the like, well, if I don't know enough, how am I going to teach somebody?
And it's like, you know more than I'm like, I am married to you and I am in this business with you. You know more than me. I was like, you can start with me. You can bounce these things off of me all day because if anyone's in Herbal Medicine for the Soul that's on this call, which I know they are, I am raising my hand all the time and being like, wait, I don't understand. Can you go back and explain that? So I was like,
yeah.
And I'm in this with you. So if I don't get it, I know there are plenty of other people that don't get it either.
Yeah. And to the point where one of the other excuses that was going to hang me up was not having as much detail on constituents in the course.
You've been hung up on that for years.
I did. I was hung up on that for years. I was like, Herbal Medicine for the Soul is never going to be good enough until we talk exactly what are flavonoids, what are alkaloids. Oh my goodness, that was going to hang me up. And to date, nobody has asked about that. I mean, and now, like in the progression, talking about being in action and learning more and like synthesizing more, now we can actually have those conversations.
Right.
But this is 6-7 years later, that would have hung me up. And I think that's the point of like, the consequence of you letting the limitations or this idea of perfection hanging you up, there's so much more that you are going to learn while you're in motion than this idea, this like fake conversation that we're having in our heads, that people are thinking that I'm not going to be good enough, or I don't know enough, or I'm not healed enough. And they're not even thinking that.
No.
They're not thinking that. The thing that's going to hang you up, they're not even asking about, they're not even asking for. They want to get going with that same example. What do I do when I get out of the hospital?
Right.
What do I do? Yeah.
Because they're not asking about constituents at that point in time.
They are not.
That's not a...
Who do we have? We have Kelly, we have Tatalia. We have so many students on here, and they have never asked about, please, Salima, tell me more about the alkaloids and lobelia.
And not to say, like,
it's not that it's not important, right?
Because it is, and you'll get there. But to get someone started, that's not where you start or where you have to start.
Right.
Because you also have to give yourself permission to grow in your work.
Yeah. And I will say, like, being human too, and we are going to have our own ailments, but I think that we get much more like sensitive to our bodies and our body's responses. And I think that our pains are really great boundaries for us, right? Like, I know when I'm getting too stressed out, my eyes are going to start twitching. If I don't catch it, then I'm going to start having shooting pains, then my shoulder, then the neck. I mean, so bad. It's like I'll wake up, I feel great. As soon as I try to get up from bed and turn, it's like, I was like, dang.
Got me again.
Got me. I got me again.
Right.
Got me again. So I think that it is really, I think we can also just reframe pain, illness, disease as different experiences that we have, but they do really help us they can be really good teachers to help us like stay in what you know are your boundaries for yourself, or when you're out of bounds, that's when we're feeling disharmonies.
Right.
Get back in bounds of yourself, your own centeredness, your groundedness, your trust, your faith, all of those things that help keep you like feeling good.
Hey, Kemsey, in the chat. I hope I said your name properly. Salima. I wonder if Salima is Salima or Salima.
Yeah, do we
pronounce it the same way? We're so glad this is right on time for you.
IG folks, go to YouTube. You can ask questions on YouTube.
And wait, there's a question. Maybe the answer, as an herbalist, I don't need to prove I healed me because I am not offering to heal you. I'm offering to help you heal you. And my journey isn't as relevant. I think that is a beautiful reframe,
It's a great reframe.
For how to market, or what would be the word, Salima, to explain.
Just explain how you work with people.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great story. Tatalia, glad you love our story. I do think we have some pretty funny stories. Amari asks, have you ever worked with other herbalists because you felt you didn't have the adequate knowledge?
Yeah, that's
Salima.
a really good question. I remember we have a client who was a long time ago, Tourette's syndrome. And I just called somebody. I think I found them on a Facebook forum. And I maybe either sent a message or sent an email and asked if we could have a conversation about it, because that was like their lane.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a conversation about it, and yeah, she was really helpful, super helpful. And I just send people to different resources. If I don't know, or if I don't feel comfortable, or if I don't have the capacity, I just send people elsewhere. Like, it's okay, just send people elsewhere. But if I do need help, I'll definitely reach out. I mean, most of you all know, like, you're in the program, Denise, student in the program, but also medical doctor, 30 years of experience. Most of my questions at this stage, I'm asking her because I need to more deeper understanding of the pathophysiology of it, if it's really complex and complicated, like the call that we had on Thursday.
You're in the hot seat quick on Thursday.
I was in the hot seat. I was like, wait, what? And we're going to do a case study on that call. But no, I will ask her, because what I did learn too, like, there's just a big gap, I think, in the herbalism world too, where a lot of the herb books, they talk about the plants. There's not enough information about the body, and there's certainly not enough information about disease process, like how things are developing and what are the different factors involved. So it ends up being a ton of reading from many different sources to figure out how to support someone. And even when I'm reading more like medical language, and I don't know, sometimes I'm like, I read that whole paragraph and I got nothing. I got nothing. But that's when it's really nice to have mentors in your back pocket to be able to ask. ChatGTP is a really great cheat for that now too, where it's like, I didn't understand this paragraph. Just explain it to me like I'm in high school. That has been really helpful when I come across literature I don't understand. But sometimes I'll ask a question based on what I've read, and I'll ask that to Denise, and she's like, that's not really, there's still missing pieces in it just because we don't have that same level of like medical training that a medical professional does. It's like, no, there's missing pieces in here. Like, that's not really what that means.
Right. And that's why we added a medical advisor to the program. But you brought up a really good point, and I wanted to just give people some perspective of how long did it take you to get to the point of knowing you had to ask different questions?
Oh my gosh, I got so frustrated. I was getting so frustrated by not understanding when I think even in the process of doing the case studies inside of Herbal Medicine for the Soul, like I just didn't know where the information was. And then sometimes there are like medical information is behind paywalls, and you need to have a license, like a medical license in order to have it. And that was actually when I asked Denise if she would mentor me. And that's when it's like, oh, this is where it is.
Right.
All of the questions are being answered. And it wasn't just PubMed. It was like up to date. And it was just like, it's just a whole new world kind of opened up. But it was that frustration. It's like, I want to be able to help, but I know that the information that I have is not complete. And it's not that we need to know everything, but it was just that frustration of like, I don't know, and I don't know where to get it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I asked her. Yeah.
And so another question I have that others may have that are starting on this journey or feeling like I'm not healed and how can I do this? Or I don't know enough. When did you stop feeling like you had to be a walking encyclopedia?
Yesterday. No. I think I still kind of feel that pressure.
Do you?
Yeah, I think I still feel that pressure. I'm more comfortable being like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But I'll figure it out. Because there is like that level of inquiry that I'll get from people. Like he called and he was really frustrated. He experiences POTS, which is, I didn't dive into exactly what it is, but I've heard about it a couple of times. And I know it has impacts on the lungs, like the respiratory system. And he didn't want to go through like the consultation process. He was just like, tell me. And I'm like, I can't, like I don't know enough.
Right.
I don't know enough about it.
But wait, let me stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
What do you mean I don't know enough? I don't know enough about what, like you personally, or I don't know enough about what POTS is?
I didn't know enough about what POTS, it's both. I didn't know enough about what POTS is, the medication that he was taking, how it was impacting him, and then him and what his experience is. And he was just like, just give me something. And he was just so frustrated. And you have to hold your boundary. And it's just like, no, I held my boundary. And that it's like, I need to go through the consultation process to do that. And he hung up on me.
Up on you? Okay.
But it's like, that's the reality. It's like, I explained that. It's like, I could end up doing more harm by trying to help you from a place of complete ignorance around what you're experiencing. Right. And it's like, it's not safe. Right. It's not safe.
Talia said he needed a Nervine first.
Yeah, most people do. But even with that, like, he's on medications and I don't know which ones.
Right. And so
I know everyone needs Nervines first, right?
Everyone does. But for someone that's starting and still, having that question, like, I don't know, like how can I help somebody if I say I want to help somebody and then they come to me and I'm like, nope, I can't do that. Or they come back and they're like, well, I just tell me what I need. Like, how do you hold that boundary but let go of guilt? If there was
I
guilt.
didn't feel any guilt.
Oh.
I didn't feel any guilt because I knew that if I bent to his request, I could do more damage, and that's not worth it. And I also think like it's abundant. You will find an herbalist who can. Do I know one right now? No. I mean, you hung up on me, so I didn't really get the opportunity to
help you there.
But I know that the consequence of offering something that could potentially be more harmful, that wasn't worth it. So I had no guilt. I did not think about it again until this moment.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And that's okay. I think the world is abundant. He'll find someone else that can support him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
What else? I don't think there's any other comments. But something that I did write down, I just saw and I remembered, was for people to remember that today was once your desire, right? So you were once that person, perhaps sitting in the hospital bed, and wherever you're standing in this moment was your desire. And if you can think back to what you felt you needed when you were sitting in that hospital bed, then that is a really great place for you to start to offer assistance to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Do I have a story? No, I don't have a story. That was just, I wrote it down and I saw it and I was like, oh, yeah.
In conclusion.
Well, it's kind of like, well, because, you're the herbalist. I'm not an herbalist. You're the herbalist. So I don't have.
You still coach people.
I do coach people.
Okay.
And, the thing with coaching that's interesting is every time someone comes for coaching, every time you talk to someone, it is always right on time because it is the exact, for me at least, it is something that I just went through. Almost every single time I am coaching someone when I am like a few steps ahead, but I can remember because I was like, oh my God, I just went through that. Yeah. And so the way I coach, and which is really helpful, is I can give the story of what I'm going through, and I can say, this is what I did, and this is what was helpful, and this is what I did, and this was helpful. But what I think is super helpful that I can do is be like, yo, I know exactly where you're feeling right now, and you can feel the authenticity in my tone because I can feel the pain in yours. Like, I know this is, you want to scream, this is frustrating, whatever it may be. But I also have to remember that when I was standing in their position, where I sit today was my hope and my dream. And so if where I sit today is my hope and my dream, then that means someone else's also. And I can help you get here because I got here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's all we got.
I know.
I don't know if we have any more pearls of wisdom in the moment.
Around that. Just like take the pressure off of yourself, take the responsibility off of yourself. Everyone has their own journey. You don't heal people, you help people. Yeah.
We have a question. Have you met a herb that you do not know? Oh, yes. That you do not know about, and it doesn't have a complete materia medica online. There is info on the herb.
That's good. So learning about herbs where there's not an extensive amount of research about the herb yet. I think the first part, my first question to that is making sure that it is ingestible. Like you're talking about an herb that is ingestible, right? Like not just like, oh, I saw this plant on the street. And is it safe for me to take? So I think baseline, we do know that it is ingestible. That is when we start to rely on organoleptics.
Your $5 words. Orga who?
Organoleptics. I think I'm saying it right. But that's when we can start to build a materia medica based on our senses And so if you know that it's ingestible and you're not really sure about it, you can start to taste it in small quantities. So you would taste it, you would like chew it, and then you would spit it out and kind of like wait for is there a reaction? Right? It's kind of hard because it's like, how much do we know about this plant? Like, we're not going to do that with hemlock. Like, so you do have to be very careful. I'm trying to think of one. Like one of the students at Spelman last year, they did chrysanthemum. And there's not an extensive materia medica on chrysanthemum, but it is ingestible. So we know it's safe to ingest. But you start to rely on your senses, taste it, smell it, make it in body care. But that's where you really need to know herbal tastes and that part of like energetic herbalism. Because unless we're going to, do the lab work, go to a lab to have it analyzed for its constituent profile, we can know some things about how it works. Like if it's strongly bitter, then we know bitters help with the digestive system, helps with the parasympathetic nervous state, helps generally like release digestive enzymes and peristalsis. So that's why the tastes in herbal medicine are so important. If it's more sour, if it's more sweet, sweet is not like donut sweet. Sweet is more like slippery elm, kind of bland sweet. Then we know it has more polysaccharides, and polysaccharides create that demulcent action, which is then soothing and anti-inflammatory. So you can start to build it, but you start with your senses. And then you actually meditate with the plant, get to know the plant, watch its growth cycle if you have access to it, or learn more about, thank you so much, learn more about its botany and its growth cycle and the environment in which it grows, because that also gives a lot of great information. Like we know cacti and succulents, they grow in the desert, so we know that they retain moisture. So there's lots of ways, fun ways to kind of get there. But this is what, even in just everything that I explained, this is what makes herbalism so big.
Right.
It makes it so big, where it's not completely clinical, academic. Like we do need those older, we still need those modalities that existed before we had MRIs and CT scans and all of this chemistry and lab equipment. We still need to know that, because if they're not going to do the funding to do the constituent profile, well, then how do we learn about the plant?
Right. But to answer the next question of how do you build a materia medica, but it's not, you don't just depend on someone else's materia medica. You can take their materia medica and you can take their information as a starting point, but a materia medica really is a living, breathing document that is continuously growing. And so taking all the tips that you just said, because you said a lot of words.
I did.
So taking all the tips that you just said and then documenting in your own personal materia medica your findings. And then if people are taking it and having conversations and giving and finding out what their experience is and adding that into your materia medica, now you're building it. And you're knowing, okay, it can be used for this. And especially because your next comment was that it's a traditional herb that is used by elders from your culture, but it's not really Western. But so then if you can, you talk to the elders in your culture and you document it. But you should have your own materia medica. Everybody should have their own materia medica, because just because it worked one way for someone in someone's body does not mean that that's an end all be all. What's the herb you gave me that you're like, this is supposed to work for you, and it brought me to my knees?
Shepherd's purse.
Shepherd's purse. I'm too hot, because now you're gonna want to go into having to know.
If it was shepherd's purse or if it was cramp bark. Either way.
No, it wasn't cramp bark.
It wasn't cramp bark. Okay,
I think it was shepherd's purse.
It exacerbated the Tammy when she did have symptoms with the fibroids. It was just like you said, fiery band.
Yeah, I felt like I had a band of fire around my uterus, around my abdomen.
And I would give her shepherd's purse. I'm like, why did I give you that though? Because you didn't have the heavy bleeding.
I don't know why you didn't.
I don't remember why I was.
The point was
it made me feel worse.
It made me feel worse. based on the documentation, it should have helped.
Should help with something.
But it didn't.
But it didn't.
But it didn't. But that also then goes into Salima's personal materia medica. It doesn't mean she'll never give someone shepherd's purse, but if they're presenting more like me, because I'm using, I'm her patient zero, then that's not where she's going to start.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the importance of understanding that a materia medica is your personal living, breathing document. And a lot of times as students, you take from your teacher their materia medica, but you quickly learn, you grow. I don't want to say you grow out of it. You don't necessarily grow out of it. You more expand it because you start putting your own personal findings in it.
Yeah. Another fun way too with like taking the herb that you want to learn more about is taking different doses and seeing what the impact is.
That's always fun.
It could be fun. It could be interesting. But we do, like, you need to write down, to Tammy's point, also writing down when you take it, how do you feel before and after? What does it feel like, if you're taking it for a month, for 3 months? Like, what are those shifts and changes? Those are also things that you add to your materia medica. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, y'all. That's all we wrote down.
I know.
If anyone else has any other questions, because again, this is a forum that we've created so that people can ask their very specific questions and we can answer your specific question to the best of our knowledge in this moment. And, oh wait, we have another question?
That was good, Miss Roxy. Yes. Did that. It was fun. Learned that it was best to eat before taking it. That's good. Yes. Write that down. Yes.
And now that goes into your materia medica. And so if you give it to somebody, now you know.
Those are your instructions. Yeah.
It's best if you eat this before you take it. Mm-hmm. And you might not have seen that in anyone else's materia medica. No one else may have realized that or thought to write that down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, Tamika.
So it's really important.
All right, y'all.
Thank you so much for showing up on our live. Again, we are committed to showing up 3 times a month to be here for y'all and answer your questions and share our funny anecdotes and stories with you. We hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you, I think, next week. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye. Bye, NIG.
What time? We don't know. We can't commit to a time.
Not yet. Right. Oh, we asked at a time. We don't know what time yet. We're gonna get there. That we're gonna be able to commit to a time. And as soon as we can get there and commit to a time, we are gonna communicate that to everybody. But we're gonna be 100 with you. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye, IG.
Bye.